Hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Psychology Podcast with your curious host, Sam Webster. As always, we are diving into the science of self-improvement and the philosophy of living a life well lived. Today, I am delighted to be officially launching a new feature of the show, which is Ask Me Anythings. Subscribers to the premium feed will get access to a dashboard to submit as many questions as they like and listen to these episodes in full. Free listeners, however, will only hear the first few questions of the episode, which will, of course, be a useful thing to listen to, but you won't have the full experience without subscribing. As this is my first ever piece of paywalled content, it does feel very strange to be making something that won't be accessible to the entire 8 billion humans on the planet if they were to look for it, when I have always liked to just do things for free and be as helpful as possible. But one of the things for myself to overcome is actually asking for money sometimes and scaling up revenue so I can actually keep on working on the project, keep doing something that is helpful for people, as well as finding time to write books, etc. So if I was to resist learning new skills and fight against change, that would be a very fixed mindset of me. So I'm embracing it and hopefully I don't appear like a sellout. Anyway, what are the questions we are going to be covering today? Well, Monique has asked what makes someone resistant to learning, which we will tackle first. After that, we have quite a few more business and podcast related questions, such as how to differentiate yourself as a full-time indie podcaster, how to handle uncertainty, fears and blockers when deciding what to commit to in life or committing to a business, how to grow a network of people with similar interests to you, and how to fund a creative business idea, and any other tips I've learned from getting VC funding for a creative startup. So some of them are quite business focused today, which is rather influenced by the fact that half of these questions are from a talk I was giving at an entrepreneur hub, as opposed to through the Ask Me Anything dashboard, because I wrote this to launch the dashboard. Hopefully still very useful questions to be kicking off the whole project with. And I'm very much looking forward to more psychology specific questions in the future. Okay, so all of that coming up, and if you are on the free feed, you will have a very short ad break followed by the main episode.
Greatness hurts. It's 10,000 hours of hard work, sweat, and setbacks. The aches, the stumbles, the falls. Tylenol provides pain relief for the champion in us all. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and fever reduction. This summer, when greatness hurts, Tylenol will be there with care to help you keep chasing it. That's Tylenol. That's care without limits. Visit Tylenol.com/greatness-hurts to learn more. Use as directed.
For a limited time, Outback Steakhouse has a 3-course meal called the Aussie Aussie Aussie! Oi, oi, oi. With so many mouth-watering options starting at just $14.99, the Aussie 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 oi, oi, oi. Is a deal worth celebrating. Start with soup or salad, then your choice of select down under entrees, and for dessert, a New York-style cheesecake. New York? That's not Australian. The Aussie Aussie Aussie! Oi, oi, oi. 3 courses starting at just $14.99. Available at Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
Okay, so what makes someone resistant to learning? Well, this question gets right into the heart of fixed mindset psychology, but does show that Monique has some clear interest in digging below the surface level definition of fixed mindset. That is just resistance to change. And I think she wants to know some of the different reasons behind why we might build this trait. Definitely a question that I could make an entire season on, but I also could probably make a season on any question because I'm prone to slightly over answering things. But for now, I'm going to enjoy coming at you with the main high level points and restrict myself to 10 minutes per question. Otherwise I will end up with an entire job just doing the Ask Me Anythings. So, the biggest things we wrestle with in life as human beings are energy, ego, social pressure, and safety and fear. And these all affect our resistance to learning. Firstly, it costs us energy to learn things. There are a million different stimuli coming at you, and the faster you can cut out paying attention to as much of that junk as possible, the more energy and attention you save. There's a reason that we're so open-minded when we're young, because we don't know anything. We have to put lots of energy into just learning the way of things. And whilst we're doing that, we try to pigeonhole as much information as possible so we don't have to relearn it. A child quickly learns that gravity works how it works, and then it stops questioning gravity. We'll learn that the sky is blue and we'll stop questioning it. And similar things happen when it comes to our skills. We start making assumptions that we are bad at something, and that saves us energy compared to engaging in the task that we often fail at, especially when there are so many other things we could be engaging in. You'd never make the most of your strengths if you didn't cut back your efforts in most areas of life. The issue is when we believe that we just don't have potential in most areas of life, as opposed to realizing we just have different priorities. Number 2, ego. This provides a constant internal push to appear coherent and already capable at things, because if we're capable at stuff, we are valuable. And this drives us towards confirmation bias, to confirm things that we already believe and resist new ideas that might take time to filter through our brain, and that would cost us more mental energy again to rearrange all these concepts in our head and spend that time looking a bit lost as opposed to looking competent. We much prefer to feel a sense of momentum and to fit new data and new ideas into beliefs that we already have. And this is very intuitive for us, as opposed to rifling through everything we know to rearrange it and build new concepts. That is not so much fun. And it's reasons like this that meant that Newtonian physics stayed around for so long, because people tried to explain all new ideas and findings in physics using what was believed to be the base rules of physics, which was Newtonian physics. And it took Einstein centuries later to look at all the increasing body of quirks in physics that just couldn't be explained properly. And he could then step backwards and be like, is Newtonian physics even making sense and the right lens to explain everything forwards? Or should we rewrite how physics works completely? And of course, he was right. The world of physics had to do a lot of rifling about to completely rework how physics worked, as opposed to just explaining everything they found using what they already thought was true. Again, that goes back to cognitive effort. Next, we have things like social pressure. Kids in school want to be good at things, and they want to be good at them effortlessly, because that's much cooler than trying like you're a needy person who wants to be something that they're not. It's lame to struggle. It looks much better to just not be interested in things. And honestly, it's kind of the same reason that we find someone unattractive if they're desperate in a relationship, as opposed to someone who's just like very happy within themselves, doing their thing with or without you. That's much more cooler and attractive, someone who's capable and independent as opposed to needy. And so when it comes to learning, we think it is uncool to look a bit desperate and lost and be struggling. We think it looks weak. And this very much leads into our fears of failure. We fear judgment of ourselves, and we fear looking bad. And as much as that, we also fear letting ourselves down. A lot of us can be afraid of success even, in case we then make a mistake later down the line, crumble under the pressure, lose any status we built or whatever else we might have earned. Instead of really focusing on our potential successes, we have a much deeper fear of losses. So we'd rather sabotage ourselves now, where we don't lose too much, rather than make all this progress that might blow up in our face. And in many ways, some of this does make sense. I honestly worry more about releasing an episode now that I have thousands of downloads in the first day than when I first started the show and no one listened. The cost of releasing an episode with a corrupted audio file or me saying some incoherent garbage is much greater than it used to be when I released episodes to no one. The show was just a way for me to learn to express myself without anyone listening, and so it didn't matter if I messed up. Whereas now, I have to express myself and hope that I somehow touch people with something they haven't heard and delights them and makes them feel good about themselves and educated. And there is certainly some pressure within that, and I don't exactly love it, and some people really do hate it. Of course, to get good at anything, you need to be comfortable being a crappy amateur. But it can become more overwhelming if you still feel like an amateur, but you actually have social pressure now to appear like a professional. It suddenly means that trying to take risks that could teach you something valuable are something you don't want to take on, and instead you'd rather just stick to not learning and just doing the thing you know. And it's very much the same with big businesses that have a product that works, and lots of people's wages now depend on it. They don't want to risk potential losses by trying a risky idea for potential growth. They'd rather just do the same thing week in, week out, but they lose the ability to learn things and they become resistant to change. Another fear that we have is asking for help. we don't want to be the kid that asks the basic question that we think everybody already knows. And that, of course, really blocks us from making progress. And it's often the dumbest questions that get to the core of what it is you don't understand. I have a friend called Jamie Rawsthorne who grew his YouTube channel to 1 million subscribers, The Zach and Jay Show, and he now runs a YouTube consulting agency. And he, for me, is one of the best people at asking dumb questions. He just relentlessly accepts his weaknesses. So he'll just text a few people he knows are good at something, and he'll ask them to have a call with him, and he'll get them in a group meeting the next day and ask them the dumbest questions about stuff where he's not afraid to look stupid. And I honestly found it really inspiring to just be involved in some of those calls and see how eager he was to learn things without worrying about if he got judged or appeared useless at something. I personally grew up quite independent and feeling very capable within myself. But one issue is that asking for help never felt natural for me, which is again part of ego. And this year I've been taking on podcast coaching with Jeremy Enns from the Podcast Marketing Academy, and it has honestly been one of the best decisions of my life. And I'd recommend it to anyone who wants to take their podcast seriously, for example. Another area where we resist asking questions is you'll see men often resist going to therapy because it's not natural for men to ask for help when it comes to emotions. Now, this answer is definitely getting too long, so I'm just going to list some of the last few things to look into. So cognitive overload, where you try to push in too many things at once. Self-efficacy, where people have a low belief in themselves, can make it really hard for us to take on new ideas to change something within ourselves. Then people have just bad learning strategies or maybe psychological reactance to something. Of course, there's biological and neurological factors like diet, illness, neurodivergent things like ADHD, dyslexia, and of course, motivation, like a bad teacher that makes a subject boring will radically reduce the likelihood that people learn anything compared to a excited teacher that makes things really fun and doesn't answer one question for a whole hour. So on that, I will move on to the next question. Thank you, Monique, for that one. Okay, as a full-time podcaster, how do you plan to differentiate yourself from other creators who may have project or company backing? Well, yes, the podcast industry has gone through some big changes as money has started to come in. You see a lot more commercial-focused podcasts run by networks that can advertise and grow their own shows, and they have a production team, they have a research team that investigates what works, a writing team, and they just pump out content that they know gets listened to, and there's just increasingly less space for indie creators. However, if you can go niche, you can really build something useful. So firstly, I wouldn't copy any competitive formats. You are not going to beat Tim Ferriss at being Tim Ferriss. And in fact, these days, running an interview show is usually a bad way to start, especially if you want to interview famous people or the world's greatest minds to learn tips and tricks. You just aren't going to get anywhere when you've got Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, Modern Wisdom, Lewis Howes, loads of just famous people with huge backing, making big shows, talking to other famous people. Competing on interviews now is basically going to be dumb. When I started my show 7 years ago, I did exactly that, and it was fine because not many people did that. Nearly all the interview shows were American, and I interviewed lots of non-American people about their different successes and insights. I had some really fascinating conversations, but I certainly wouldn't do the same thing if I started today. Instead, what I do is I'd embrace your interests and go really deep. For example, there are plenty of music review podcasts out there, and I don't listen to any of them. Even though I love music, I just don't need to hear someone's opinions about an album when I could make my own opinion myself. But the podcast Dissect, they dedicate an entire season to one album. He'll spend just a few episodes plotting an artist's entire history and career up to the release of the album that is the subject of the season. And then he will take each track and dedicate a whole episode to analyzing everything about that track. He'll go into the instruments used, the different effects and how they were built, and he'll do samples himself of how to get to the sound. He'll analyze the chord patterns, progressions, B versions of the track, the lyrics used and how each lyric may be mapped onto the chord progression used at the time and maybe complements the metaphor of the lyric. And it is so obsessive and so wondrous to listen to that it is incredible. And as someone who is interested in music and sometimes makes music, I listen to it even if I don't like the thing being discussed because it's so wildly fascinating. And the reason I'm saying this is if you look at the whole world of podcasting, you're never going to be the best at anything, but you can be the only person at anything. And I'll break down how I think about going about this for my own show after the break. Sadly, I can't distinguish myself from other podcasts by just having no adverts, as that doesn't make any money, and then I can't really live my life. But if you do want to skip these ads, you can subscribe to the premium feed, or of course, just press the skip button. Catch you in a second. This episode is sponsored by porkbun.com. If you haven't heard of them, they are not a delicious option for your lunch. They are a provider of domain names who I first heard about from Derek Sivers, who is one of my favorite people. And he loved Pork Bun's prices, their customer support, ease of use. He also found their name kind of fun. Currently, porkbun.com are offering .pro domains for just a single $1 for our listeners. So whether you are a freelancer or consultant, maybe a certified lawyer or digital nomad, if you are an expert, authority, or really, really good at something, you can tell the world with a .pro domain to give an edge of credibility, memorability, and findability. Level up your online presence for only $1 for the first year at porkbun.com/growthmindset24. Or use the link in the description because it's easier to remember. Coupon code is BEAPRO24 without spaces at porkbun.com/growthmindset24, and the link is in the description.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is,
"Thank you for calling. Please listen to your list of 46 possible service options."
which is why when you choose USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable. 24/7 online service for claims, access to roadside assistance, and more, all at the touch of a button. Start getting the service you deserve. Get a quote today. Ability to receive a quote depends on membership eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliate, San Antonio, Texas.
For a limited time, Outback Steakhouse has a 3-course meal called the Aussie Aussie Aussie. Oi, oi, oi. With so many mouth-watering options starting at just $14.99, the Aussie 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 is a deal worth celebrating. Start with soup or salad, then your choice of select down under entrees, and for dessert, a New York-style cheesecake.
New York? That's not Australian.
The Aussie Aussie Aussie. 3 courses starting at just $14.99. Available at Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
If you look at my show, there are lots of psychology interview shows around. There are endless mindset shows and neuroscience shows now. And over the years, there's also been a lot of growth mindset shows. But I'm now currently the only show that goes really deep on covering all the different aspects of psychology and how they can tie back into growth mindset, whilst also stepping back and cross-fertilizing ideas from physics to philosophy that really help you build towards a life well lived, which is why you're building the growth mindset in the first place. And honestly, there's a lot more I could do to differentiate my show that I didn't think about very well when I started, but luckily I did something well enough from the start that I got listeners. But if I was starting a show from scratch, I would probably build a very different show that was seriously unique, that I could just be the absolute only person out there. I think the few things that I do well with the current show is getting away from some of the biggest flaws that I'll usually find in mindset shows, such as going into things like manifesting and believer achiever nonsense that isn't helpful to anyone, or in the other direction, going very hard on just the hustling coaching mindset where the podcaster will tell the listener that the source of all their problems is just how weak-minded they are, that they can destroy absolutely any problem in their life just by being better and working harder, and completely ignore all the psychology and deeper things behind why they might be making whatever mistake they're making. And I don't think they're useful. And actually, there's 2 more things that annoy me about shows. Politics. It's so hard to listen to so many things these days without the person having an opinion on what they think you should think. And I deliberately try to not mention politics at all. And even when it comes to my life advice, I still try to be aware that people have different needs and requirements and are at different places. And honestly, some people in the world having the goal of buying a Lamborghini could be a really useful goal for their situation. Maybe to prove to other people in their community that you can escape the issues that you're growing up with. Whereas for many other people, buying a Lamborghini could be quite a toxic goal. It doesn't matter. People have goals. What's the psychology towards how you get there? And how do you first assess if it's a good goal for you or if you're doing it for the wrong reasons? That's all I care about. Another thing I did sort of mention was interdisciplinary ideas that I really think helps someone understand anything when you have a much wider field of view. You can't understand macroeconomics without understanding all the different elements of microeconomics. You can't understand mindset without understanding all of psychology. You can't understand psychology without understanding neuroscience or philosophy. And you even learn things when you start looking at physics and economics, history, health, etc. Okay, besides me, a confusing thing that people look at when starting a podcast is the advice to just keep on going and not give up. So on the one hand, the last man standing effect is huge. There were loads of growth mindset shows over the last 7 years, and now I'm the only one still active. And if you can just keep going, your chances of success go up a lot. But equally, if you keep doing the same thing and don't change at all, your chances of success, if the thing you're doing isn't working, are actually pretty much minimal. So you need to do something that you enjoy doing and can keep doing long enough to give it the chance of success. But you also need to be open-minded into changing your niches, changing the way you deliver content, and seeking your own little home that you can call yours on the internet that is genuinely different and useful. Of course, if you're not innovating and improving what you're doing, the show will go nowhere, and there are so many shows with 500 episodes and no listeners. If you want to learn any more about weird ways to get better at niching, the episode I did on 7 weird life-changing skills to improve your life will have a lot of good lessons for you and a good example of the kind of slightly odder, unique content that I make that hopefully is the sort of thing that you can't find anywhere else, and why at least I think there is a reason for me to do what I do. So anyway, don't be the best, be the only. Okay, on to the next question. What criteria do you use to determine if an idea is worth pursuing? So I realized that I do have basically endless ideas, and that really helped me with the issue of scarcity. And this could be ideas from service-based projects that I might do part-time, or giant, this would change the world ideas, at least in my head, they would change the world anyway. But of course, it is ideas that are the very easy part. And it's about execution and realizing that all ideas you have change drastically when you manifest them into reality, by which I mean you actually work on them and make them happen, not you dream them into reality. And we have to learn to embrace the duality of the creative pie in the sky thinking for idea generation, and then being very analytical with your ideas, writing everything down, paring them back, cynical reviews of what the revenue will do, what your job will actually be, what will go wrong, why everything will suck, who could do it better, what's the competition like, and how does it align with your personal goals. And when you put them both together, you kind of can get a better score of why you might want to do something or not. So something I used to do was I would look more at revenue, scalability, and competition. And that's changed over time as I've had some successes and realized what are the things I actually want to be doing with myself. And so when I look at an idea, I really base it much more on my desired lifestyle and interests and who I would become whilst running the idea. Like, what would my role day to day be like whilst I run the business? Does it suit my personal skills, or would I be building skills that I want to be building? Would I be interested in doing this for the next 5 to 10 years? If you are on the free tier, that is your lot. If you want to hear the rest of that answer or the other 3 questions, which include how to overcome commitment blockers, finding funding in the content creation industry, and how to build a support network, then you will need to become a subscriber, where you will also have ad-free listening and the Discord community access, where I'm also building a bit of a accountability functionality into it because a lot of people have been asking for that. So if you need some motivation to work on your projects, that could be the place for you. And of course, if you have any questions for me on anything like psychology, philosophy, mindsets, or your own situations, then access to the Ask Me Anything dashboard could be a good investment for you for the price of 1 coffee a month and with a 20% discount if you join this month. You'll also be able to ask any questions from my own experiences. Those are very welcome. I've lived in 7 different countries. I've diagnosed ADHD and have started 20 businesses, and a few worked quite well. Many were terrible. I've hitchhiked across Kazakhstan, visited North Korea, finished an ultramarathon with a broken leg, which was actually super dumb, and I would never do that again. I was a sailor in the Caribbean for a while. I was a Himalayan mountain guide. I've cycled around Europe. I think my wide variety, slightly too wide perhaps, of life experiences. We'll probably have at least one or two aspirational interests in there for you that I'm always happy to discuss any useful lessons I've had from them. So joining the premium subscription could be where it's at. And I probably mentioned this a bit too much, but I'm a bit excited about this whole launching period. So please forgive me. Of course, all the main content will always be free. And you can currently still book a meeting with me on Wednesday afternoons if you like. And that will be open until the premium membership becomes too busy, at which point I will also block that off. So get in whilst you still can. And there you go. Have a great weekend and stay awesome. Thank you so much for listening.
Go you!
Your consistency to reach the end of an episode is legendary.
My hero!
But when we learn things, it's important to reflect. So I politely invite you to take a pause, rifle through the biggest ideas you just heard. So here's your opportunity to hit pause and have a think. Okay, did you wrestle with some insights? Information doesn't stick when we race from one podcast to the next without using our brain to play with the knowledge. So here's another go at a pause. Alrighty, I'll let you off to continue with your life now. If you have any ideas or feedback for the show, I'm always interested to hear from you.
You're the best!
And other than that, please stay curious. Curious. Quote. Smiling for no reason.
Hi, I'm Alexis Ohanian. You may know me as one of the co-founders of Reddit, but more recently, a large part of my identity is being a father to my wonderful daughters. In my podcast, Business Dad, I hope to open the conversation about working parents a bit. You'll get to hear from a wide range of business dads, from Rainn Wilson and Guy Raz to Todd Carmichael and Shane Battier, to find out how they balance being a dad with a successful career. Business Dad is available now, so be sure to listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.